Charlotte, a war of words has erupted.
Yeah, it certainly has, Andrea. The New South Wales Premier, Gladys Berejiklian, says that other states should be grateful to New South Wales for taking the bulk of returned travellers, despite a number of them actually not being from New South Wales. This comes after the Western Australian Premier, McGowan, criticised Ms Berejiklian's handling of the pandemic and for her not trying to eliminate the virus altogether. Premier Berejiklian says that she supports what National Cabinet endorses and is always striving towards zero community transmission cases.
The restrictions we have in place now are to get to zero community transmission. I don't think there's any state in the nation that hasn't had cases come up in hotel quarantine, so to suggest that you can somehow eliminate the disease from Australia I don't think is realistic. But I don't believe keeping your borders closed and inflicting pain and suffering on thousands of people is the way to go.
The acting Prime Minister Michael McCormack has jumped in defending Ms Berejiklian and her team, saying that they have achieved great things during this pandemic and have become the benchmark for the rest of the country.
Carrying the burden of the returning Australians through their quarantining. And many West Australians, Mark McGowan needs to also remember, have come through Sydney and done their mandatory 2-week quarantining and then returned to Perth and elsewhere in Western Australia.
Andrea, in the past 24 hours, New South Wales has recorded 5 new coronavirus cases. 2 of those we knew about yesterday, a man that presented at Mount Druitt Hospital and his partner, 2 that are under investigation on the northern zone of the Northern Beaches, and 1 that was already in isolation linked to the Berala cluster. Now, as a result of a number of these cases cropping up, the New South Wales Premier says it is unlikely we will see any easing of restrictions for this week at least.
Look, I'll be honest, that depends on the health advice, but unlikely given where we're at, because we're still mopping up. We're still seeing community transmission, even though in most instances they're household contacts or people already in isolation, but we have had a couple of examples where they're still unlinked, and that's always concerns.
Concerningly, in 24 hours, we actually had just over 14,000 tests conducted. Now, that is a significant drop to what we were seeing a few weeks ago. Around Christmas time, it got close to 70,000 tests in a 24-hour period. So the authorities are really urging anyone with mild symptoms or who may have been to any of the venues that are on high alert to come forward for testing. They're hoping that that number will stabilise at around 25,000 per 24 hours.